guys, it's headshot photographer and acting industry expert Douglas Gorenstein. Welcome to my interview series, Looking Through the Lens, where I zoom in and focus on acting business experts to help you, the actor, make it in the biz. Are you ready? Let's go. My special guest today has worked for Disney. She's cast on Broadway. She's cast for Netflix. She is an award-winning casting director, writer, and audition coach. She's also the author of the incredible book, Confessions of a Casting Director, and I'm proud to say she's a great friend. Please welcome casting director Jen Rudin.
Ta-da!
Hey! There she is.
That was so nice of you. Thanks for the pitch.
Yeah, of course. You look great.
Thanks.
I love where are the chains from? Are they,
there's this cool in Columbus Circle, those shopping places like underground. Yeah, there's this very, very cool jewelry stand, and I've purchased stuffed candles there, and I like them. I think it's important to still get dressed, even though we're all working from home.
Yep, I think so too. And just a confession of a headshot photographer, I am not wearing pajama bottoms right now.
Right. Yeah, I think, I've actually been working from home for 10 years, ever since I left the Walt Disney Company. So the whole working from home and Zoom wasn't really new for me. And it's just interesting the way everybody else has learned to adjust. And my feeling is, you can work successfully from home, but you have to have a schedule. You have to have a plan. And you have to get up, get dressed, take a shower, and go to work. Otherwise, you're going to be on the couch all day watching Netflix, which is okay, but not productive.
No, definitely not. I agree with you. And I'm so excited to have you here today to be interviewing you. I know all of our actors at home and parents at home of young actors are going to be thrilled to hear all of your advice today. So thank you for being here. Very important question. I know everybody at home is going to want to know this, and of course I want to know it. Did you Peloton today?
You know what? Today is my day off from the Peloton. I have to say I've had my Peloton for 6 weeks, and I've never looked back. Today I actually was tired today. So today, but I did do Dennis's 30-minute advanced yoga, and then I did Ross's 20-minute yoga, and I did some meditation. So I did use my Peloton app, but I didn't ride today. I do think, you have to give your body a couple days of rest. And keep in mind, Doug, my husband and I are real cyclists, road cyclists. We met in the New York Cycle Club. So this Peloton, while it's super fun, and I love the 90s rock and the 80s rock and the themed rides and intervals in arms, which is really what I like to do to get my double workout in. It's not the same as riding your real bicycle, but it's what we have for now. And it's really fun. I love it. And you do too.
I love it too, and I just have to say I don't do the arms. This is my arm exercise right here. I'm lifting pen. Whew, I'm exhausted, but you and I are on the same page because I also did a Dennis workout today. I did a Dennis ride.
Yeah.
I did a Dennis 80s ride, so I was jamming to all my favorite 80s high school hits.
Yeah, you got to have fun on it,
All of our audience at home, you've got the important information about our workout routines. Proceed forward and book lots of jobs based on that. But let's talk a little bit about your background. You were a child actor. Did you start out doing theater or commercials, film or TV? Tell us.
Sure. So I was really lucky because I grew up on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And so I started auditioning professionally when I was 8. But I think it's really just because I lived here. I don't think my parents would have brought me in from New Jersey or Connecticut, and you were from Michigan. So for me, I got just discovered at a friend's birthday party. His father worked for Ogilvy and Mather, the ad agency. Mm-hmm. And I already knew I wanted to be an actor, and he said, Jenny, you should do commercials. And so he hooked me up, showing that it's very important to network, and it is who you know. He connected me to a commercial agent when I was in 3rd grade, and she started to send me out for commercials. So it was really a referral even back then. But then I went to theater camp. I spent 6 years at Stage Door Manor, and I loved theater, but I enjoyed doing voiceovers and commercials, and I did some after school specials, and I wasn't as successful as I like to think I was. I had some real heartbreak, and I wasn't very equipped to handle all the rejection that you have when you're an actor going on auditions. I found it very stressful, and I would lie awake at night and be like, "Please, God, please give me that bologna commercial," and then God would say, "Why should I listen to you now, Jennifer? We never speak." But I found it really stressful, and I think that my brain was geared that I would read the New York Times and the Frank Rich reviews and John Simon in New York Magazine, and I knew who was replacing who in what Broadway show, and I had a playbill collection. So I think I was sort of casting and producing at a young age, and therefore was not destined to be an actor, but was determined to still be in the business, but to do something else on the other side of the table.
And what was your experience as a young actor of casting directors? What was it like to go in the room? Were most of them kind? Were they welcoming?
They were mostly women, and some liked kids and some didn't. I do know that the first audition I had for a Jell-O commercial, I froze. I was with a family, we're supposed to be eating, and the casting director was like mad at me because I wasn't doing the lines because I was nervous. It was my first audition. But I do know that the casting director in 1985 for the after school special that I ultimately did book, she was great because she was, I don't know who it was, but she was facilitating this, really stressful final callback where there was group A of kids and group B of kids, and she was making us all feel good. And I always thought that seemed like such a fun job because you're dealing with people, you're hopefully making people's dreams come true. And it just seemed like it was very easy for me to sort of fall into that category. And I don't know who she was, but she definitely inspired me that day I looked at her and I thought, I'll probably do that someday. In the meantime, I'm standing here with my group of kids, hoping that they choose my group. Ultimately, they didn't choose my group. They chose the other group. Oh. What happened is that the girl who they chose got a better movie offer. And so they brought me back one more time, and I ended up doing that TV movie. You never know.
That's great. You never know. And also, it sounds like that casting director, because she was so nice and good at doing her job, she was able to open up that door for you in a way that maybe some of the casting directors who were mean and, didn't like kids were kind of shutting you down.
Yeah, I don't know if it was shutting down. It was so, it's so nerve wracking to go in there and sort of be judged by strangers. And, my mother thinks she took me to all my auditions, but the truth is I really did start going to auditions when I was 12 by myself, again, being a city kid, and things were different back then. So like a lot of the time it was like just me, like and nobody back in the 80s really did what we do now. Nobody was coaching. You didn't have to be memorized. In fact, sometimes you just went to ABC casting, got the scene 10 minutes before you went in. You weren't even taped, it was a pre-read. And if they liked you, they called you back and then they taped you. So I feel like it was a lot, I don't want to say easier back then, but the stakes are so much higher now. The competition is so fierce, mostly because of technology. But back then there were like 20 girls my age. Now there's 2,000, and you really have to approach each audition as, what is my plan? What does my character want? What is going on in the scene? And most importantly, what's the tone? Is it a dark I was gonna say cable, is it a dark streamer show, or is it Chicago PD for NBC? Like, what is the context of the show? Is it a half-hour comedy? Is it a 1-hour drama? And back in the 80s, you would go to ABC and it was a half-hour comedy that you were auditioning for, so you knew it was a sitcom, and it's just a lot easier back then. But now everything's very murky. So I really help people make a plan. They say with scuba, plan your dive your plan. And it's, though I don't scuba, it's sort of the same thing. It's like, prepare yourself, have a plan for your audition, and go in, whether it's in person or your self-tape, do it, make choices, and then see what happens, and then get on with your day.
And so when you say get on with your day, because I know you were, in bed, praying for that bologna commercial.
Yes.
What do you say to actors who are they're living and they're dying by every audition? How do they feel good after they've done the audition, or how do they judge it? And how do they keep going when that, I was thinking about ice hockey. I was an ice hockey player. I kind of come back to this reference a lot. And the majority of the time when you shoot on the net, you're not going to score. the majority of the time when you're up at the plate to bat, you're not going to get that hit. So how do actors deal with the percentages?
Yeah, I mean, but at least if you're playing on a team, and like I played softball, as a kid, it's like at least if you play on a team, like somebody wins, somebody loses, you can keep score. Somebody, so you struck out 3 times that game. The next game you strike out only once. You can chart your progress. For these auditions, you can go on 400 auditions and still not book one. So how do you chart your progress? I think you have to just have a good audition and move on, because even if you did a great job and you coached with me and you prepared, if they didn't like your hair color and you don't match the family that they're casting, then then it's not your role. So you just have to keep also knowing that there's always going to be another audition, which is easier said than done. And also, I think you have to have a really balanced life. Being your home life is really important. Being able to remember what's important, right? You can't put all your eggs in that one basket for that audition, but to go home and hug your kids, or cook dinner with your spouse, or get on your Peloton, or do some yoga, just stuff to keep yourself so that it's not all about your acting career. I always valued actors who study other things in college. I did history at the University of Wisconsin, and I love to meet an actor who did biology as their undergrad major, because that means they're an interesting person, or chemistry or psychology.
And do you find when you meet actors and you say, tell me a little bit about yourself, that they just start talking about all of their acting credits and their training, as opposed to talking about their life experiences and other interests, to perhaps that might make them a little more interesting to you? I mean, what do you recommend to actors in that regard?
Probably to keep it brief and not share too much personal stuff. I've met actors sometimes who say I was a nurse for 20 years and I'm finally pursuing my dreams. And I'm always like, that is wonderful. I love to hear about how you came to your acting. It's different when you meet a 6-year-old, because they're just doing it because they're cute and somebody noticed them and got them an agent. But I also, there's not very much time to chat at auditions, which is one of the reasons why I wrote Confessions of a Casting Director. Whoops.
Which is my favorite book when it comes to learning about the business. It's a great read, not only for parents and kids, but it's a great read for adults as well, because you've been on both sides of things, and to just give you an inside glimpse in how to approach auditions and the mistake that actors make, and the parents make as well. It's pure gold. In fact, Leo, my son, who's also an actor, even though I know so much about the biz, from a headshot standpoint, and have worked with so many actors over the years, just using that as a touchstone. And Leo, my son, read it as well, and it's really been so helpful to both of us in approaching his auditions.
Thank you. Well, the reason why I wrote this book, and it sounds like I'm dishing on the greatest, casting couch stories, right? But really, I wrote it because I was at the Walt Disney Company. I was a casting executive, and I was going around the country in January of 2009 to find a new Ariel for our Broadway production of The Little Mermaid. There were 600 girls, young actors, that showed up in open calls in 10 different cities, and I kept seeing mistakes that they made, small mistakes, singing the wrong cut of the song that didn't showcase those money notes that you need if you're going to be Ariel singing Part of Your World. It's a high E, I believe, that she has to hit. Wardrobe mistakes, just headshots not stapled to resumes. And I started taking notes on my trip. And I was somewhere, I think I was in Texas, and I was like, I've got to write a book, because I don't even have time to speak to these women to make some suggestions. So it was January 2009. I went back to my boss at Disney, Tom Schumacher, who's president of Disney Theatrical. And I said, Tom, he had just written a book called How Does the Show Go On? I said, I have to write this book. It's an audition tips book. Maybe I'll call it, Best Foot Forward, because we had Mary Poppins playing downstairs at the New Amsterdam. And he said, yes, Jen, you absolutely should write this book. These are your audition stories. Make sure Disney is, you can use the stories from your time here. Make sure that we're in a good light, of course. And Disney, believe me, after HarperCollins bought the book, the lawyers at Disney read not even a proof. They read early drafts to make sure that everything was good. And the book is just to help you. And it's funny because I reread it quite often and I'm like, oh yeah, that's good advice. And it's really broken down into biteable size advice, right? You can read it on the subway, you can pen through it. Nowadays, people, I think the fastest thing is just to put it on your Kindle or download it, because Amazon, and it's taking longer to ship. But little things that you just don't even think about, like what I just mentioned with Little Mermaid. And so of those 600 girls, they really did inspire me to get going with the book. And while I originally pitched it to HarperCollins for parents, at one point it was called A Modern Day Stage Parents Guide, it was terrible. You probably remember some of the titles I was batting around. And when HarperCollins bought the book, that was what they bought. And then they said, you know what, make it for actors of all ages and take all those great interviews with parents and put them into one chapter, which is it's a big chapter. But so now it's for actors, it's for everybody, adults, young actors.
It's really a terrific
parents.
read, and I encourage everybody to pick up a copy or to download it as well. And who booked the part of Ariel? And why? It's
so interesting. We've come so far with technology. I had a little digital camera, and I made myself a YouTube channel, and I took my I would videotape the girls that were in my final callbacks in each city, and then I must have taken that memory card and put it on my laptop. And anyway, so my creative team in New York was able to watch the actresses that we posted, and again 600, and I would say maybe in each city there were 10, narrowed down to 5 young women that could actually sing that song. So there was a girl, my very first stop was Cincinnati. I went to CCM, the conservatory, college conservatory of music, and I found a junior in college named Megan Campanile, and she was redheaded with beautiful porcelain skin. And she ended up being I met her the first day of my 10-city trip, and she we ended up bumping up the current understudy, Chelsea, and then Megan went into her track. But you have to understand that, the costumes were so expensive that I needed a 5-foot, I don't know what the height was, who could fit into the mermaid stuff. And Megan was the one. And, I felt bad because I pulled her out of college before she graduated. But the sweet story is that she was from Louisiana. She was leaving Cincinnati to move to the big city to be in her Broadway show. And at the time I had a studio apartment and I was moving up to a larger apartment. So I gifted her my apartment. And so she got to move into this on the Upper West Side with a doorman. If Jen
casts you in anything, she gifts you an apartment.
She was the most qualified one to do the singing and the acting, and had a dance background. And when you're casting musicals, to be able to do all 3 is really hard to find.
And why is it so hard? You would think that actors are supposed to, if they're in musical theater, they're supposed to be triple threats, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really work in musicals anymore, but I do know that, if you can, I used to say, if you're a dancer first and if you can sing the way you dance, you'll be okay. And if you can act the way you sing, if singing is your forte. But, I gotta say, I used to go to those dance auditions for Mary Poppins, and I would sit there sweating watching them learn the tap combos. I mean, it's really hard. And I think it's actually harder to book a Broadway show than it is to book a commercial or a pilot, because you're trying to fit into costumes and tracks, and it's really and I'm glad I worked on Broadway, but now of course.
When I first got to know you, you were casting a lot of commercials. In fact, I actually had an audition once for a commercial Jen was casting. I had finished photographing for the day, and Jen called me up, and you were casting a project, and they didn't really know what they were looking for at that point, right? You would see.
What, this is Verizon?
This is the Verizon wireless commercial.
Yeah. So Verizon was kind of a new brand at the time. This was just right after 9/11 or just before 9/11, and we were doing this campaign for Verizon, and I was like, oh, it's a new phone company. But we know there was 1-800. There was the Sprint guy, Carrot Top, and then there was the AT&T guy, that was him, and there was the Sprint business guy, and we were looking for this new Verizon guy who, of course, we ended up casting, and the rest is history. And every single guy of all ages, ethnicities came into our office and had to say, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
So Jen calls me up on the phone, and she said, what are you doing? Are you still shooting? I said, no, I'm done for the day. she said, listen, they don't know what they're looking for. Can you pick out your hair? And right now I've got this, my hair is pretty curly. It's like my quarantine cut, I call it. And so my hair was even longer then. I could pick it out into like a big, as I call it, my big Jufro. And she said, can you pick out your hair and put on like a Kramer type of sweater, Kramer from Seinfeld, and just come down. And so I came down to the office, and there was all these actors in there. And I remember you called me into the room and you handed me a cell phone and you said, okay, Doug, just, pick a place that you're at and pretend like you're talking on the cell phone, and then just say the line, can you hear me now? So I came up, I don't know if you remember this, with the brilliant idea that I would be on a roller coaster. And I sat there and I started screaming, can you hear me now? And I remember you cut me off. You said, cut, and you turned off the camera and you looked at me and you said, Doug, you're sitting on a park bench. Go.
Yeah, I think my boss came in and was like, what is going on in here? And like stopped the audition. But, we were really
so embarrassing. And then I went back to my day job.
We'd seen everybody in the world. And then this guy, Paul Macchiarelli, came in, and he had been like a hairstylist or a makeup guy. And he came in with these sort of Elvis Costello glasses, big glasses, like very East Village. And I said to myself, that's him. That's the guy. Wow. And it was. And years later, he and I reconnected, and he's in my book, and we had a drink, and I was like, I hope you remember. And he's like, of course I do. And it's just one of those things. So the lesson, of course, for everybody, and we talk about it in the commercial chapter of Confessions of a Casting Director, is go to every single commercial audition that you get, because you just don't know. I do want to share one other good commercial story. Tracy Toms, who was recently in Falsettos on Broadway, and she's been in Cold Case, and she works a ton. She's in a new Apple series.
She's so good.
She had just graduated from Juilliard with her acting degree. She comes in for this Excedrin commercial, and it was a national network spot, just like Verizon. And she was just playing a teacher with a headache, from the kids. And I remember she was like asking all these, actorly questions, because she just come from Juilliard. And I turned off the camera and I said, Tracy, I know you have this degree from Juilliard. It's just like, just be a teacher with a headache. And it's national network, and she booked it. And so over the years, every time I see her, I'm always like, Excedrin, keeping it real. Because at the time, the commercials were very real. When I was a child actor booking commercials, Duncan Hines, Dunkin' Donuts, it was very selling the product. But then in the early 2000s, it became this much more real, talking to your best friend, don't act type of thing. And that's, I think, why yours was probably your roller coaster choice was probably a little over the top.
I remember just headed back to my studio afterwards saying, well, I'm glad I didn't sell my cameras.
I know, it's hard.
Speaking of Juilliard actors, I've worked with a lot of great Juilliard actors over the years, photographing their headshots. And their training is so incredible. They're so connected to their feelings. And we were doing a shoot, and when I'm giving an actor direction during a shoot, I'm not saying things like smile or be intense. I'm giving them direction that will help bring out a feeling, make them smile or help connect them with something that's more serious. So I was giving this Juilliard actress some direction. It was a more serious shot that we were trying to get, and all of a sudden, tears start streaming down her cheeks. And I look out of the corner of my eye, I see my makeup artist grab some makeup and some powder to go in. And, I knew that they were thinking oh my gosh, the eyeliner is going to be all smeared. And I was like, oh my gosh, I made this person cry. And then, I said, let's stop for a minute. And I said, okay, listen, I want you to get just up to that point where you're going to cry, but don't actually cry. We're going to, have to keep fixing eyeliner. She was laughing after that.
Yeah, because they're trained to really access their emotions. But I'm telling you, when you're on a Law and Order set and you're that scene where it's, it's 4 a.m, they're filming your scene and you need to cry, you need to have your trigger ready. So I'm all for the grad school work.
Absolutely. I mean, they're so connected and everything is so accessible to them, and the training is amazing. So an actor gets their sides from you, right? For a project, you contact them, they have their sides. Then they prepare. Hopefully, they hire a coach like you to work with them, unless of course, you're casting it. And then they come into the audition. What's protocol? How do you like an actor to come into an audition? And when they meet you, how do you like them to behave? Are there do's and don'ts in that regard?
There are so many do's and don'ts, and so many are listed in this book with thumbs up, thumbs down. I have to just say for the record, I have not wanted to shake hands ever. And so I have a really strict policy where I would never shake hands. I would say that if a casting director reaches out their hand to shake hands with you, then you shake their hand. But I've also been sitting at a table with 12 people where an actor wants to shake everybody's hands. And I've always been the one who was like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. I don't want to touch your, germs. And now it's ironic in this pandemic because we're so aware of our germs, but I've always been like that. So, don't shake hands. You want to be prepared and you want to control as many things that you can prepare. There's so many things that you can't control, but you can control getting to the audition 10 minutes ahead of time, maybe 15, but not an hour. You can control taking an earlier train so that you do arrive in time at Penn Station to get a coffee and not be rushed. You can control being memorized, because you have to be these days with your scenes. That means rearranging your evening plans the night before if you have to learn 13 pages, which you have to sometimes for TV. And also just like, what are you wearing? Did you go to Dry Bar and get your hair blown out if that's important for the character? Taking the time to realize that, you're making a good first impression and you have one chance, as my father says, Rabbi Rudin, to make a good first impression. So, you got to get all that stuff in order. And then leaving sort of your baggage outside. HarperCollins made these really fun videos. You can see them on JenRudinCasting.com.
Segue for a second. I want to talk about headshots. Talk to our actors out there about headshots, about what you look for, about what's important for you for headshots, and I'll weigh in a little bit too.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, Doug did the headshot for my book, and he's actually done my headshots for the past 10 years. I think we've had 4 or 5 series of them, and brand new headshots on Jen Rudin Casting, which is great. So, headshots, it's so disappointing when you don't look like your headshot, and your headshot is your business card. So the same way I always like to say that we go to a professional dentist to clean our teeth, and we go to the surgeon when we need surgery, and the accountant for our taxes, you must go see a professional headshot photographer like Doug. Because even though anybody can take a picture now with our phones and filter it this way, Doug's headshots are incredible, and you're the only person I send people to in New York. Oh. And the thing is that there's nothing more disappointing than somebody coming into the audition and they have they don't look like their headshot. I think about it a little bit like internet shopping. I know it sounds weird, but you're shopping and you're like, wow, those pants look amazing. And then you order them and they come and they're nothing like what they look like, and it's disappointing. Or internet dating, which God forbid I'll never have to do again. And it's like, you're like, well, you don't look at all like that picture. It's disappointing. So, you have to look like you on your best day. Even my headshots with Doug, like, yes, I did the hair and makeup option. So I'm not going to look like that most days, but like, I put my best foot forward, and you want to really look great in your headshots. So it's really important to have great headshots. It's also important to keep a couple of hard copies in your bag when you go to an audition, because sometimes some of us are so old that we want to move headshots around on the table with our creative team, our director and our producer, and like look at how people look together. So you always want to have a few beautifully reproduced at reproductions or wherever you send people. But you want to really have great headshots, because when we are clicking around looking at the casting breakdowns, and I don't know you as an actor, I'm going to decide whether or not I want you to self-tape for something based on your headshot. It's like going Amazon shopping, right? So if you think about that visual thing about internet, we're looking online, the colors, that's really important. And it has to pop, and it has to be you, and,
I love everything you've just said. I have nothing to add to that. This has been an incredible conversation. I have one last thing, if you will indulge me with this. We've all heard of the television show Inside the Actors Studio with the late great James Lipton. And if you would just kind of play along with me for a second, Jen, I got a few James Lipton-esque questions for you. Okay. I'm going to put on my serious voice. I'm getting serious here. Okay, Jen, Who inspires you?
Oh gosh, Anne Frank.
Wow. That's
Anne Frank,
that's
writing your story, survival. My husband inspires me because his big thing is, pay attention, leave early and bring a raincoat. And these are his wise words. Pay attention. And that means for everything, whether you're on your bicycle or you're at an audition. So
mm,
Anne Frank and my husband, my parents. This is crazy. My parents, actually, I do want to say my parents, because my mother always raised us that, women have to work 5 times as hard as men because we're women. My father always encouraged us to pursue our dreams and always said, Rudins don't quit. Right. I come from a major workaholic family where we've all written books and we work really hard. But I think that's the important thing. My parents, Anne Frank, my husband. Yeah.
great. Okay, another serious question. I love those answers. Favorite ice cream?
I don't really eat sugar, so I guess I would have to say like mint chocolate chip from way
Mint
back
chocolate
when.
chip. Although if
Yeah.
we're together and we have an ice cream together, then I'm going to eat all the ice cream, I guess. So,
Yeah.
you're a person to hang out with if there's only ice cream to eat. And finally, got to get very serious for this one. If heaven exists, who would you cast to play God?
Um, Oprah, Whoopi Goldberg, somebody
Wow.
who's, got some of an incredible presence. Yeah, I think so. Whoopi Goldberg we've worked together, and I
You
don't
did
know.
your movie Lucy
Yeah,
in the
she started my
Sky.
short film Lucy in the Sky, and also some animation. So, because like Whoopi is she's funny, but she also Rosie O'Donnell, like
Mm.
these are really funny comedic women who are also really serious actors, and so they live in all those worlds.
Inspired by our conversation. And Jen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, and your Instagram is
Rudin J.
Rudin J. I always have to double check that because I always go to type in, at Jen Rudin. Check out Jen's Instagram. Check out my Instagram at Douglas Gorenstein and my website douglasgorenstein.com. And please remember to hit the like and subscribe button. And thank you again, Jen, for being here. And I'm going to sign off with a very special moment for you. Hopefully this doesn't give you too much of a flashback. Can you hear me now? All right, thanks, Jen. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.